What if you just stopped measuring yourself from the outside in and did it from the inside out? And I don't even like using the word measure because that's not the point, right? It's not about measuring. It's not about scrutinizing. It's not about criticizing. It's not about points. It's more a state of being. And the question comes back to, do you feel at peace being you? You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be happy all the time, but do you feel at peace with being you? This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. Hello, beautiful people. How are you doing? I hope you're well. So, the topic for this week, or at least what I'd like to begin with, is success. What is success? How do we measure it? How do we view it? And I think, we've been living in a society that for so long has measured our worth by what we do and how well we succeed. And if we don't succeed, then we're not good enough. We're not worthy enough. We're not deserving enough of whatever recognition, validation, love, belonging. And, and so, it's bred an interesting kind of culture of insecurity and culture of competition, that the aim is to have this external success that looks a certain way that then gives us the confirmation of like, okay, you've made it and you're now good enough and you're worthy of belonging to the tribe, you could say. But the issue with not good enough and the issue with this kind of competitive, I need to win, I need to succeed in order to be approved, it's the dangling carrot, right? You never get there, you never catch it, it's never good enough, the bar will continue to rise. And the reason why I want to talk about this today is because I was having a conversation with a dear friend of mine, and I've been in this transitional phase for too long. And so I was kind of reflecting on my life, and we were somehow talking about astrology, which I'm very curious about, and I follow, and also I take it with a big pinch of salt. And we were just talking somehow about like having astrological readings, which I haven't had one in ages, but I remember one very, very specifically when I must have been in my early 20s. And I remember this person saying, like, you're going to have a hugely successful period of your life from 33 to 53 because Venus is doing such and such in your chart for that period of time. And I was at the lunch, like chuckling, being like, damn, I don't know where that bitch be at, because it's like since 33, like, man, it's been hard. It's been really hard. I mean, some amazing things. Leading up to 33, I co-founded a wellness center with my ex-husband, and my coaching practice at the time was really thriving, and changed lifestyle on a really big level and had a baby, and a lot of things that externally you could say, wow. And then also it felt like this period of just this kind of, I don't know, the almost but not quite, which I think I've talked about before. And I know some of you can relate to it, the almost but not quite. And so that level of success was almost but not quite, almost but not quite. But it's been also a really challenging time. I went through a divorce. My practice didn't go in the direction that I wanted to because I had to give up a lot, in order to be a mother and to live in the middle of the countryside. And my husband at the time was the one that was kind of going off and building his empire, and my whole world kind of got really, really teeny tiny. And so I'm like, this Venus period doesn't feel all lovey-dovey and, expansive and successful. It's been like damn hard, really, really damn hard the last, 10, 12 years, you could say. And then my friend said to me, okay, I want to play devil's advocate, because the way that I see you, Corinne, as a person is internally, you are incredibly successful. Like, you are beyond where most are at this point in life. Your inner world is so rich. the whatever. She was saying lovely, lovely things, but the person that I am and the growth that, even she's witnessed just in the last several years, and even in the last 6 months, she's like, you're not the same person that you were 6 months ago, Corinne. And so she's like, that's hugely successful. That's hugely successful, where your sense of self and your inner world is so intact, or centered, or there's this knowing. I think I can reflect for myself that the last 6 months, and never mind the years leading up, and never mind the decade leading up to that, everything is this growth, right? It's not linear, though, it's cyclical. But I can say in the last 6 months, even just that period, I can feel that I've settled into an even deeper aspect of myself, an even more loving, committed, loyal, like I got my back, embodiment and relationship with myself. Because this romantic experience that I had was almost like that test that was like, okay, let's see where you're at, Corinne. Let's see where you're at with your self-worth, with your boundaries, with your communication, with, how much you compromise, in a healthy way and a not healthy way. Let's just see where you're at, and let's see if you're going to lose yourself. Because I think when I was younger, I had the ability, the propensity to lose myself in relationship, or even though I have a very strong sense of self, there was this part that would, yeah, I mean, I think women in general, more than men, I'm not saying that men don't, of course you can, but women in general can lose themselves in relationship, or can overgive, or can overcompromise, or put themselves second or last, or and so the loving test, put it in air quotes, showed me like, oh, you've grown, Corinne. You didn't abandon yourself. You didn't overcompromise yourself. You spoke your truth. You placed healthy boundaries. You communicated what you needed, what didn't feel right. You trusted your intuition. I was in a live relationship with myself. And I think that's the thing about, it's really easy to use all of this kind of self-improvement and self-growth, and it can be so over analytical, and it can feel like it needs to reach this point of this destination that's like, there, I did it, I made it, and now I have no issues, and I have no wounding, and I have no triggers, and I have no nothing. And that's not how it works, right? It's like we are an ever evolving, growing, living, live being, that if we don't fall into monotony and sleepwalking through our life, there's the potential to constantly grow. But again, I want to stress the point, it's not growth that comes from scarcity and not good enough. It's growth that comes because that's what's interesting. I'm looking at a plant right now. Plants always grow. That is their nature. And I think we're no different to that. So when I was speaking to my friend, and it's like she was saying, I think that you're hugely successful. It's just not measured by the way that we measure it in our society, or the way that I even interpreted that astrological reading some 20 years ago. My mind went to, or even the astrologer, and the way that they were sharing it, because I had all this potential, and I was told, oh, you'll be the next prima ballerina, you'll be this famous actress or choreographer. Everything I was always reflected back as something that it had to be like famous, right? And this was even before social media, where now it's like everyone is famous, right? Or quote unquote famous. And, it's all about getting the million followers. But this was what was being reflected back to me, which in one way was beautiful, because it was very in support and in belief of my gifts, or my talents, or my wisdom, or my potential, or whatever you want to call it. But it was also equally very detrimental, because it felt like I had to meet this expectation, and not even of other people. It was even of my relationship to myself, that it's like, oh, I have this soul mission, and I need to, as I was told when I was 16, I have to affect the masses. And, sometimes it's like, fuck, that's like a heavy weight. That's a big responsibility to carry. And the Capricorn in me is like, has always felt responsible. So, there's two sides of a coin, right? But I think when my friend said that, it was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. You're right. It doesn't just have to be this external success of, I wrote a book that sold millions of copies, or that I have an overbooked practice, or that I've got loads of money in my bank account, or I have a house and a holiday home and this car and that. It's We're redefining how we measure success. Like, those things are wonderful. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Those things can be wonderful, as long as it's not at the expense of, I'm going to say, our soul, but also that it's not. We know this now, that you can look at people on the outside, and you can look at their life on the outside and think, oh, that's a hugely successful life, but then you know that that person is miserable, or they're lost, or they're depressed, or they're in constant pursuit of, or whatever. You can see that internally they're not successful, right? Using that term, they're not at peace. They don't feel like they can just rest within themselves. It's never enough, right? That never enough culture, society, that vibe that's like, keep going, keep achieving, I need to get better, I need to get more. So I think since 2020, there is like a click in the fabric of reality. And what I mean by that is that there was this choice point, as I talked about from the get-go, that also this reflective period, and this reevaluating of like, what am I doing with my life? What actually really matters to me? What has meaning? And so, what I've observed over the last 6.5 years is people going, I don't want to be in the rat race anymore. I don't want to do the 9 to 5. I don't want to do something that doesn't feel meaningful or purposeful or authentic to me. I don't want to be in the relationship that is dead and has been dead for years and has no chance of being resuscitated. I don't want to have a friend circle that is superficial and doesn't feel true and meaningful and really connected from the heart or genuine. There's been this kind of excavation of humanity, and some people are like diving into it and like taking out the shovel, and other people are digging their heads in the sand and being like, I don't want to look at it. Some people are still kind of in the old programming of just, going through the motions. Some people have had massive spiritual awakenings, and like their reality has been rattled. But it's been a period of a phase, I should say, of pulling the rug back and looking at what's underneath it finally, and maybe even naming the elephant in the room, but also just this question of, yeah, what has meaning to me? And I think when we start to look at life through the lens of our inner being, which is really our true being, because it's like, if you think about how your soul rests behind your heart, when you go in and you ask your heart, what matters? What do you desire? What do you want? And I don't mean heart like a romantic, like, oh, I want this, and it's this fantasy. It's like, no, 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 no. What feels true to me, right? Not the external glitz and glamour and the confetti and the shiny, polished version of your life that then would give you this title or put you in this category of, you're successful and therefore we love you, right? You're now validated, stamp of approval. We go into this internal space of, what makes me happy? What makes me feel alive? What feels true to me, that makes me feel like I'm living authentically and that I feel free? Because when we feel free, we're being who we are. When we feel a little bit imprisoned, we're not being our true selves. We're living for other people or other people's belief systems or for societal belief systems. We're measuring ourselves by something outside of us, and often we come out losing, lacking, behind, right? And so the question isn't, what am I doing? That's not the first point of contact. It's, who am I being and how am I being? And does that feel fulfilling to me? If I were to redefine success and how we measure it, I think I would ask the question, how comfortable are you in your own skin? How at peace are you with yourself? How well do you know yourself? How able and capable are you of being with yourself, staying with yourself without abandoning, rejecting, neglecting, ignoring, criticizing who you are, no matter what you're experiencing, whether it's a good day or a bad day, a good phase or a hard phase, whether you're happy and bright and positive or you're feeling sad and down and depressed, it doesn't matter. It's for me, the measure of success is, how well do you know your own humanity and how well do you take care of your humanity, your human self? And then, we could take it to another level of, how well do you know your soul? And are you living out what your soul wants to experience in this lifetime? I've done a grounding exercise every morning and evening for 25 years. And the question I ask myself in the morning, or it's not even a question, it's the intention of, I'm open to receiving that which my soul wants to embody through me today in this lifetime. So again, I'm the vessel, I'm the vehicle for my soul to have this human experience. And so my job every day is like, how do I open and be receptive to it? Now, we're human and we're habitual and we have all of our shit. So I'm not saying I go through my day being like, I'm open and my soul is guiding me everywhere and it's all in flow. Like, no, sometimes I totally forget, and I have like a day where it's like, whatever. But I think just even beginning the day with that intention, and then throughout the day we'll forget, but maybe there'll be a moment where we remember and we reconnect to that. It just gives a little bit of this space and this ability to witness and observe our human experience without taking it so damn personal, and to realize that it's so much bigger than what we sometimes think life is. Like, we think all of our problems are a really big deal, and I'm not saying that to undermine the very realness of that experience, because it can be very real. The last week I was going through so many different things, and like a ping pong match in my head of like, what am I doing this, am I doing that, it's just like, and then beneath that there was this almost this existential pain of, I cannot continue this pattern. I cannot continue to be in this physical environment. There was such a soul pain. It was so deep and profound. And so I don't want to undermine the realness, the truth of that in that experience. And also I think I've learned to go, okay, I'm having this experience. It feels incredibly real. It is quote unquote real in this moment. And and there is this much broader experience happening of, your soul is having this human experience, and you're not this human. You're not this flesh and bone. You're not this body. You're not this story. You're not these belief systems. You're not these thought patterns. This is just it's like the car acting up sometimes, and sometimes it needs to go get an oil change, or sometimes it overheats, or it's just part of it, right? And I think if we attach ourselves so much to it and we make it a bigger deal than it is, or we undermine it and we don't honor it, but it's holding the micro and the macro at the same time, being in the experience and being the eagle eye view on top of it. Both are required. And I think when, we do whatever kind of self-awareness work, it is to be able to have that space. It's a space between your human experience and your divine experience. And it's a breath in between that can pause for long enough to observe and witness, rather than being in the reactivity of our human experience, which it's so easy to do that, right? It is so damn easy to just be in it. But you can be in it and observe it at the same time, if that makes sense. So going back to success, What if we didn't need to measure it by like what we're doing in the world, and that it doesn't have to be about the hustle and the proving and the, how many followers you have or how much money you're making. And, I get that we're in a time where it's also, there's a lot of survival stuff being triggered. There's a lot going on that is really, really, really messed up and it's very real. But I'm talking more from a kind of psychological, emotional, spiritual perspective. What if you just stopped measuring yourself from the outside in and did it from the inside out? And I don't even like using the word measure because that's not the point, right? It's not about measuring. It's not about scrutinizing. It's not about criticizing. It's not about points. It's more a state of being. And the question comes back to, do you feel at peace being you? You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be happy all the time, but do you feel at peace with being you? Or are you still running and hiding? Are you afraid? Are you ignoring? Are you rejecting? Are you neglecting? Are you abandoning? Are you pointing the finger? Are you criticizing? Are you being mean? Are you being judgmental? Are you comparing? Do you feel uncomfortable? Do you feel like you hate yourself? Do you feel like you wish you could be someone else? Whatever it is. And all of that, all of the things that I listed, if you're experiencing any one of those or many of those, there's nothing wrong with you. It just simply means and indicates that what is needed is for you to turn around and walk towards yourself with love and compassion, and to hold all of that, to embrace that humanity, to embrace the parts that you don't like. And that's just a judgment. And, judgment takes time to soften, because really judgment is just scared and it feels like it's not good enough. It all kind of stems back to, I don't feel good enough. I don't feel lovable. I don't feel significant. I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel included. And so then the journey comes in to show up as your most loving mother, as your most loving father, as your most loving source, God, universe, whatever, if you want to take it out into the macro level. But it's about returning to love and kindness and compassion and patience and forgiveness and gentleness with yourself. So there's actually nowhere that we need to get to. It's just the state of being. And what would it feel like if we just redefined success to simply say, I feel good being who I am. I feel comfortable in my own skin. I accept myself. I love myself. Even when I fuck up and I mess up and I embarrass myself or I make a mistake, or I still love myself. I'm not going to leave my side, right? I'm not going to shut down my heart. I'm not going to reprimand myself. So we've been in this trajectory, there's this whole externalized experience. And now as the feminine energy and quality comes back in, it's like, no, get really curious about your inner world. The external world will reflect that. It's fine, secondary, right? Whatever you do anyway should be an expression of who you are. It shouldn't be something that's like, I'm going to do this on the outside so that then the inside feels good. No, the inside is what should motivate and inspire whatever we do on the outside. And then really they're interconnected, right? They're not separate. Everything should be an expression of our authenticity, of who we truly are, our authentic self, our soul self. That's all it is, right? So the invitation is to firstly just bring awareness to how you measure yourself from the outside in, how you measure success. What does success mean to you? Because we all might have a very different definition. I'm kind of just using a blanket, generalized definition. But what does it truly mean to you? And if there are parts of you where you're like, well, this isn't successful and that's not successful. And if I look at my life, it looks like a whole failure. You don't want to know how many times I've said when I'm in a hard time being like, I'm a fucking failure. My life is a failure. This was a failure. That was a failure. No, because it was all grist for the mill. It all has made me the person that I am today. And am I perfect? No. Is that my goal? No. But do I feel solid within myself? Yes. Do I appreciate the relationship I have with myself? Yes. Do I feel at home within myself? Yes. So for me, And what my friend was reflecting back to me, that feels like quote unquote success. So the invitation is like, get curious, what does it mean to you? But I would invite you, I would encourage you to not have it attached to something that you do. Connect it to who you are and how you're being and how you're feeling within your human experience. Remember, the doing is just an expression. It's not the defining source. It's not the part that measures your worth. Because that's too volatile, right? You know, like sometimes you're going to do something, you're going to totally fuck up and mess up, and like that's okay. You'll make mistakes. If you don't attach it to your worth, it's okay. You know, even if you have a moment of embarrassment or shame, you'll get through it and you might learn from it, you might grow from it, or you might just like, whoa, okay, throw that one away. And then you begin again. But if you attach your worth to it, then my God, it's like too big of a risk. So sometimes you don't take a risk because if you fail, it fundamentally means to you, I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. And so a lot of people keep their lives really, really tiny because it's like this too big of a risk. But if you realize that everything I do is just simply an expression or a curiosity, it's a playfulness even, or it's a learning opportunity. It's a growth opportunity, but it doesn't define who I am and what my worth is. Then it all gets a little bit lighter. You know what I mean? So play with it. Ask yourself the questions. And be honest with yourself. Be really honest with yourself without the masks, without the filters. You know, hold any shame or I'm not good enough or I'm not deserving or I'm not worthy. Just hold it with love as you write down, this is how I define my level of success right now. This is where I feel I'm falling short and I'm failing, but this is how I want to redefine it. And then these are the ways that I feel successful in that redefinition. And then you get to the point where you don't need to use this terminology. I'm just using it as a gateway, right? But who gives a shit about success, right? It's really all just about a state of being is what it's about. So play with it, be curious, be loving, be kind, be gentle. Remember that you're worthy and good enough as you are right in this moment, that that's your birthright. And everything else is grist for the mill. It's the arc of humanity, of how we forget who we are to remember again through our human experience, and our soul evolves through that arc and that human experience. And there is never a right or wrong. There's never a success or failure. It's just simply an experience. And when we pop through to the other side, we'll be like, whoa, that was a ride. And it will go by like this, right? So a reminder to all of us to not take it too seriously, but to honor the experience, but not take it too seriously. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. As always, take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. Bye. Thanks for being here with me. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.